And we have three items. The first two are the repeal of the suggested repeal of two items. One is the cave-in team response. The second is the first response for trench rescue incidents. And the third item that we're going to be discussing is Bill 4018, which is secondhand personal property dealer's license. And with that, we're going to ask Susan Farag to please bring us through the first two, please.
Good morning. These are two related repeals of executive regulations. They're under Method 2, which means if the council does not act on them, they would automatically be repealed after a certain amount of time. We wanted a little bit of clarity on them, so we introduced and you approved a resolution that extended the time for the council to consider these regulations through June of 2019. However, there's no controversy involved. They're repealing these two executive regulations and putting current practice under fire department policy, and the fire chief's here. He can explain a little more how that works. We're recommending approval of both.
Good morning, Chief. Thank you for being here. Are you going to talk us out of doing this? No, you're not. Go ahead.
Scott Goldstein, no, Mr. Katz and committee members. This is a continuation of what we developed in starting in 2014 timeframe of bringing together a bunch of separate as well as widely across the department policies. Anything that dealt with incident response was brought together underneath what is the main policy, the incident response policy. And then all of these subcategories are appendixes. Appendix J, which is the new policy for technical rescue incidents, replaces both 6689 and 6589, which are basically 28-year-old policies that were codified as executive regulations in the 1990s. The new appendix has been through all of the notice and opportunity internal processes, was approved by the Fire Commission in the Fire and Emergency Services Commission in the December cycle, and went into effect on January 2nd and is in place now. We have a few others on the hit list for this year in response to natural gas emergencies, and a couple others that as we go through the continuation of updating policies, we will be, you'll see a couple others of these ER repeals that are being replaced with departmental policies.
Good. Any questions of the committee members, or are we good with both of these? I guess we have to do them separately for you to tell you, but
I think we're very good. Can you, the policy seems straightforward enough. Can you elaborate a little bit on how it differs from the outdated policy?
So when you look at the two of them, 6589, which is by title First Response for Trench Rescue Incidences, was addressed to only the members of the department, or actually more generally, most of the members of the department, those that were not technical rescue specialists, not cave-in team. Originally in the late 80s through the mid 90s, the team's title and structure when it was created was the collapse rescue team or cave-in team. So if you were not a specialist in technical rescue, the 6589 applied to you. When you get there, when there's been an excavation that has failed because of shoring and what other material, how to act, how to best approach the excavation or the hazard area, what skills and acts you could do as a first responder to improve and prepare the scene for the specialists to come in. So that's what that one articulated. 6689, which was the cave-in team response, outlined how the team responded, what compositions the units made up the team, and did not get into, as the new policy, Appendix J did not get into specific standard operating guidelines to shore a trench to do the technical components, because that's too varied in how it approaches. The new policy addresses all components of technical rescue, so that's structural collapse, confined spaces, or tank rescues, vault rescues, rope rescues as well. Also in there falls within machinery rescues, so if somebody is entangled or entrapped, heaven forbid, inside of a large piece of equipment, under the umbrella of the National Fire Protection Association, technical rescue classifies all four of those together. So The new policy is a benefit for all responders, all basically 2,700 folks of MCFRS, as well as giving them the ability to make situational assessments and, when technically necessary, be able to implement, those first activities. And as we outlined it with a mnemonic acre, how we want to access, control, rescue, and then evacuate, anybody from a hazardous situation. And do that in such a way that's mitigating the risk to the rescuers, as well as being as rapid as possible to the victims at hand. So,
Great, thank you.
Gabe, are you?
No.
Do you want us to do them separately, or can we just tell you both?
You can tell me both.
Both are repealed, and we're
3 to
all
0.
okay. That's unanimous on that.
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to invite Mr. Drummer to please come to the table, and everybody else associated with this, Police Captain Michael Ward, the Consumer Director Eric Friedman, Detective Sergeant Daniel Clements, and Judy Hanger, who's the Administrator of Pawn Precious Metals Secondhand Property Unit. Thank you all for being here. If everybody could please tell us who they are, and then we're going to ask Mr. Drummer to go through. Eric, would you like to start to tell everybody if you remember who you are, please? Yeah.
Eric Friedman, Director of Montgomery County's Office of Consumer Protection.
And Judy Hanger, Administrator for Montgomery County Police.
Sergeant Dan Clements, in charge of the Financial Crime Section.
Captain Michael Ward, I'm the Director of Investigations Division. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay,
You must
Bob
be
Drummer,
Yeah.
Council Legal Staff. The secondhand personal property law is a tool designed to help, well, I guess to make it more difficult to sell stolen goods and to help the police department recover stolen goods. And there's actually a split of authority. The state law covers, I believe, precious metals and gold, and we have the authority over everything else. So this law affects personal property that's not precious metal and gold. The state law covers that. And the bill is something that came about through, I guess, requests from estate dealers who were handling, who assisted residents or an estate with selling the personal property of the estate, and generally selling, downsizing, and estate sales done in the person's home. And all the property presumably is owned by that person and less likely to have been stolen. I can't say could never have been stolen, but less likely to have been stolen. And this bill would amend the definition of personal property to exclude property that's, I can read it to you. It says, personal property that's offered for sale only on residential property and is owned by a resident of that property or part of the estate of a deceased immediate past resident of that property. And this would allow the estate sales to go forward and downsizing sales on the person's property without complying with the secondhand personal property law. That's the way the bill was introduced. It's my understanding the police department and the Office of Consumer Protection that licenses the dealers is fine with this, although we haven't gotten an official position from the county executive. The second part, I don't know if you want to stop and talk about that or move on and go to the issues starting on page 3.
Yep.
Council staff would recommend you approve that provision of this bill. It doesn't seem to significantly hamper the police department and what they're doing, and estate sales have not been reporting already, although they should have been.
Well, let's go through it as you're going through each. Are you
Okay.
going through each one? Are we okay on the issue number one, exempting personal property liquidations held at the owner's home? Are we okay with that provision? Okay, so that's a 3-0. Please.
Okay, the second one is something that the Office of Consumer Protection asked to spread out the renewal date for a dealer's license. Right now, they're all expiring on July 30th of each year, which gives them all of them all at once. I believe there are about 218, I think, dealer's licenses, and they would just like to make it 1 year from the date of issuance so that they wouldn't necessarily all be July 30th.
I'm fine with that. Are you, gentlemen, both of you? That's a 3-0.
All right, then the next one was something that came up at the public hearing. We had one person testify, Amy Presley testified that she supported the bill but would like it to go a little further and allow an estate sale off the premises to be also exempted. The police department, my understanding, does not support that expansion. It's their belief that once you move the estate sale off the person's residence, I can say that, you would then increase the likelihood that it'd be commingled with other goods, and then you've got the same problem that they're trying to prevent in the first place. That if somebody just calls it an estate sale, I got a lot of stuff from an estate, I moved it over to some other facility, and so they're not in favor of that. Based on that, council staff, we're not in a position to doubt the police department, so we're.
Very wise on your part.
At least on this. I guess, I'm sure there's something we would, but
And
not
I'm sure,
on this.
and vice versa.
you know.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm sure they'd have a lot of things they disagree with me about, but, so.
On that one, right now, if there's an estate sale in someone's home, an auctioneer can I'm asking, but can an auctioneer go into the home and auction items inside the home?
I believe they can. Obviously, there's
please.
two issues here. The estate companies, when they come in, they're going to market the sale and publicize it. They're going to assist with their customer, who is the person selling, and they're going to assist in establishing the value of the items, and they're going to mark them for sale and so forth. So one way this happens is that they have an open house after this has occurred, and the public comes in and purchases the things for sale. And as was mentioned, it's our belief that, when this occurs in a house, a private residence, and the items are all from that house and they're being sold in that house, the likelihood of anything being stolen is extremely small. We are concerned that we have heard some reports that these companies are bringing in other outside items for sale in an estate, but it's not likely that that's happening. Having an auctioneer come in is just a different type of selling. If it's going to occur in the residence that the property is being sold from, and it's all property belonging to the people holding it, that's fine. It's just a different type of a sale, as opposed to having a fixed price. It's an auction instead.
And I can tell you, when I first heard of it, I thought, well, I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. But after seeing your concerns, I understand why you have the concern. The only other question I have is if someone's has a condo or has an apartment, and rather than be inside the building, inside the apartment, could they bring it down to a party room or a common area room? And is that still considered on the resident, in the premise?
I'm not sure what the law would consider that. I mean, I don't think we would be opposed to that. It's still, while it may not be in a condo or an apartment, it's still in the building that is
Right.
the residence. That would be okay. Our concern is when it's taken to an off-site someplace else, and then we have the possibility of other materials being
No,
commingled in and so forth.
I got you on that. As I say, at first I thought, well, it probably doesn't make, but I could see your concern. Go ahead, please.
I would assume, but just want to confirm, most of the estate sales happen on the property, that there are not very many that happen off property, or is within the market that the case?
Judy? Judy is the one that enforces these for us, so.
When it's
You're
listed,
gonna, yeah.
when it's listed as an estate sale, I have not seen any of them that were not at the estate. I do know that there are companies that do take property to a location that is their housed location that they will sell.
Andrew, sit with us, please. Andrew, just to bring, Andrew's one of the co-sponsors, as am I. We've already agreed to number 1, number 2, and we're working on number 3 right now, which is the only one that's caused any concern at this point. Any other points or?
What'd you say at the beginning, Bob, about what's governed, the precious metals that are governed under state law?
Yeah, the
state law
state law
silent on everything
preempted
else?
us from
Covering
regulating
those.
the, right.
And it's silent on everything else?
And it's silent on everything else, and that's where we step in. I think maybe we even have authority, I'm not sure. I don't remember, I think the state law actually authorizes local governments to regulate the rest. If I
Yeah,
remember,
no,
it's
well,
been
that
a
would
while.
make sense, right?
Yeah.
But Captain Ware, I was going to ask you, so what are all the things you can't sell at an estate sale? Like you can't sell guns, I'm guessing. Under state law, or can you?
Let me get to that in a second and just clarify your first point, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
So there are 2 laws that regulate this broad topic that we're talking about. The state law has to do with precious metals, and it requires anybody dealing in precious metals be licensed and report to the local police. So that's separate. Then the county law deals with all other secondhand property other than precious metals.
There's no other licensure requirement under the state law for people selling anything else except precious metals?
Correct. And then
But what about guns, for example?
So, well, there's federal regulations about that.
Right.
Anybody selling a gun has to be a federally licensed firearm dealer. We
Right.
refer to that as an FFL. So I'm not aware of any of these that are selling guns. Are there any auctioneers or estate sales that are FFLs?
None of them have ever reported.
So you have to cut on your mic.
I apologize.
That's okay.
None of them
It gets
have ever
confusing.
reported selling guns.
So what does one do in Montgomery County
Sell it to a
when you
dealer?
want to sell your estate and it includes any firearms?
I think they'd have to go to an FFL, a federally licensed firearm.
Resell the gun to a gun
Right.
dealer?
So there's several gun shops in Montgomery County.
Right.
Those are licensed, but there's also private citizens that hold these FFLs.
Right.
So there's certain paperwork that has to go through. They would be required to make sure background checks were done and so forth. And it's regulated by ATF.
Right. No, okay.
And I'm not aware of any estate dealers in Montgomery County or auctioneers. It's possible, but I'm not aware that any of them are FFLs.
Right.
And is that for guns and rifles, or is that strictly for handguns?
It should be for the transfer of any firearms. There's different regulations for what's required depending on the type. You know, a regulated firearm, a handgun, an assault rifle of different types need background checks and so forth, and different types of paperwork. There's state level paperwork as well as federal level paperwork,
So you think they have to go to an FFL and resell to them the gun separately?
I believe.
And there's no gun shows in the county, right?
No.
And how would you know, though, if somebody's deceased and their family puts just all their property, including their firearms, on the list to be sold at the estate sale?
I think if they were selling it when they did not have an FFL, they'd be in violation of the law. How would we know unless we were there to see it?
You probably wouldn't know, right, yeah. Anything else that's regulated, nothing else is regulated under state law, not art, not
Just precious metals by the state law.
medicines, not anything else, okay,
Oh, probably. I'm not aware of that, yeah.
right, okay.
Okay. Anything else, Andrew? Did you? We're coming your way. I don't know that you want to try to convince us not to, but anyhow, go ahead.
No, I appreciate it. Sorry, I was coming from Fed committee meeting upstairs, which we finished just now and ran down here, and look forward to conversation. Sounds like it's an interesting one on this provision. I appreciate the fact that we have support from consumer protection, police, and I'm hoping we can arrive at a bill through this committee where everybody is on board and looks forward to allowing for
Okay.
businesses and thoughtful regulation without hurting businesses, which is where we were purpose of the bill. So thank you.
So on this one, I agree with staff recommendation as well. Do not approve this amendment. I don't know where you all.
I agree.
That's unanimous from the committee. And number 4, please.
Okay, number 4 is a late request from the police department, which they're requesting an amendment to the bill. Currently, it's really unclear. The Office of Consumer Protection generally enforces the law, or at least issues the license, and would issue a citation for not having a license. The police department would like to be able to delegate to the administrator, Ms. Hanger, to issue a violation, a citation for a violation of this law. Somebody who doesn't comply with the registration requirements, in addition to the Office of Consumer Protection. Because it's my understanding it's the police department that's more likely to find out about those violations and not the Office of Consumer Protection. So the amendment is on page 4, the proposed amendment on page 4 of the packet, and would simply clarify that a citation for a violation of this law can be issued by the chief of police or the chief's designee, or the director of the Office of Consumer Protection, or the director's designee. I would think generally a police officer could always issue a citation. I guess this would just make it clear that the chief could designate an administrator.
And I have no problem with that. The only question I have with the word designate, does that mean that someone has to say who they are in advance, or can the chief or the director of Office of Consumer Protection say that 3 people can do it or 5 people could do it? How does that work?
Well, there are regulations. I mean, we always write the director or the director's designee, because the police chief is not going to be out there issuing
Right.
these citations.
Well, you never know with Eric.
Eric might be, but but I mean, he has people in his office doing
Yeah.
it. He's not actually doing it. So, but in this case, there are regulations that could be amended if this law is to make it clear that the administrator is a person that has the authority to do that.
And
that's what I would recommend that the department do, is to they have the executives amend the regulations to make that clear.
And do we need a plural on designate? Should it be for more than one person?
If I may.
Go ahead, please.
Police officers, as was already stated, already have this authority. The one person that we're concerned with right now is Judy, or who is in Judy's position. She has no authority to enforce any of these regulations, and she's the one person who is monitoring these things. As was also stated, the Office of Consumer Affairs currently has that authority, but it doesn't really fall under the umbrella of what they do on a regular basis, and they don't have the same access to the information that Ms. Hanger has. So that's what we were asking. So it would really only be for Judy currently, or anybody in her position in the future as a civilian employee of the police department.
I'm fine with the provision. I just think maybe if there would be 2 people in the office at some point, maybe we would say there would be more than a single. Does designate always mean singular?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we always write, or the chief's designee, and it's whoever the chief could designate 2 people.
Okay, all
theoretically.
right. So
An
that's,
officer is automatically a designee?
Yeah, well, an officer has
I don't
the
remember
authority
seeing that
to
before.
enforce all the state and county laws as
Right.
being a sworn officer, so they don't really need this
Right.
written in the
Just
code
the
for them.
administrator, right.
Yeah.
okay, I'm good with it. Are you?
I don't have an objection. No.
Okay. So that's a 3-0 as well. Is that everything that we need?
It is, so just to be clear, then you're 3-0 to approve the bill with the amendment on page 4.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.